All right, guys. So I want to jump in and introduce to you guys the idea of public service ads. What are they are, or what are they? How do they function from different ads, and what necessarily constitutes a campaign? So let's first talk about PSA. What does that actually mean? According to the Advertising Council, the objectives of public service ads are education and awareness of significant social issues in an effort to change the public's attitudes and behaviors and stimulate positive social change. So if we take a look here, instead of, an apple a day, blah, 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 this is plays off of that idea. Reading each day keeps illiteracy away. So this is an example of a literacy or illiteracy public service announcement campaign, or a small piece of that. So what makes a campaign effective? So you want to look at, especially when your target audience is concerned, does it enter the pop culture vernacular? Does it positively affect the culture? Is it relevant to what's going on currently in regards to your cause or issue that you are creating for? Does it make sense in the time now that it's being created in? Does it have a point of view or philosophy that changes things? Maybe it's a super dramatic ad that's, you know, causing you to make sure that you recycle, or, throw your trash away properly. Does it strike a chord in us? Does it make us realize something? And does, most importantly, does the campaign know us? And when we're talking about us, we're talking about the target audience, who it is created for. So you may have to do research because you may not be in your target audience. Your target audience may be, parents and families that have kids from 5 plus to 11 years old. If you are not a parent who has kids in that age, you may not be super familiar with it. But maybe you have aunts and uncles who have, your cousins are around that age. Kind of figure out, relate, there's probably somebody that that's going to be in this target audience, and you can maybe talk to them and use them for research, but also you can look up and research on your own, you know, typically what these folks are concerned about and what motivates them. And most importantly, is the insight relevant for the times and the audience? So, everything being timely and contemporary, you will notice when you look at some of the ads through the National Ad Council and through the PSA Ad Council, which is part of National Ad Council, that a lot of these ads have expiration dates. Some of them, we've seen they've been around for a while just because they keep running them and playing them. They've even updated Smokey the Bear, right? But for a long time, the Smokey the Bear ads were the ones that we've seen for the last 20 years. But we want to make sure that they are on par. They don't have to be super pop culture-y, but they do need to be relevant to what's going on in our day and time period. So think about constructing the story, whether it's a dramatic story or a humorous story, or it's just kind of a matter of fact point of view from the person telling the ad story. You need to construct that narrative. It's all about a visual and conceptual narrative. So, for example, this ad here. It says, one child is holding something that's been banned in America to protect them. Guess which one? So, this is a kid holding a Kinder egg, and this is a little girl holding an assault rifle. So, it says down at the bottom, so here's our big call to action, right? This is our big statement. And then at the bottom, it says, we won't sell Kinder chocolate eggs in the interest of child safety. Why not assault weapons? So, that is supercharged, right? So if we think of just the whole narrative visually behind the story and the concept of this ad, just this image altogether is like, holy crap, right? They're using shock and awe. They have two kids that look like they're about the same age, and they're both very solemn and serious in their approach, and they're both casually holding the items, making it seem like both of them are could be everyday life, right? So your story should illuminate something about the nature of the person, the subject, or the situation. So you can construct your narrative in your story through the text. Maybe it's just a super simple image, and then your text really packs the punch. Or you can have both of them, like this one is, kind of working together to sharing that narrative and that story. All right, here's another one. Again, very intense image. This one is primarily driven by an image. And it says sexual predators can hide in your child's smartphone. And then this is the Innocence in Danger project or campaign. So again, the story starts with a problem or conflict and should demonstrate the ability to understand and find a solution to the problem. So again, the problem is either in your text or your image, and either or support the change or the cause that you should be paying attention to, right? And this one really drives home that, there's predators on the internet, that may be reaching out and trying to target your children. And this doesn't show, a predator on a computer talking to a little girl or whatever. But, this kid is maybe, middle school or early preteens and old enough to have a phone on their own, and you never know what those hidden dangers are, right? So that's kind of the whole story, those hidden dangers and why that's a problem and what the solution can be. So again, going back to constructing the story, you need to find a common tie to human nature. So needs, hopes, aspirations, desires, and all of these are of and for your target audience. And I'll have a couple of exercises for you to walk through where you research, and kind of forecast what their motivations are. So, in the process of examining how we interact, function, and behave in various situations, you may find a way to sell an idea or promote awareness for a cause. So, again, thinking about those basic human interactions and what motivates people to do something or not to do something one way or another. A lot of that is basic thinking about the human condition and how humans usually interact and behave historically towards certain issues. All right, so change versus choices. So, change, if you're trying to change something, if your PSA is promoting for a change for something, what kind of change do people want? How do things change? Why do things change? And how can you affect change yourself? So, a lot of this we're operating off of this one, right? If I'm the target audience, what is going to spur me to believe that I actually can control the situation or I can actually contribute to a small part of what this ad is telling me to do or not to do? Choices. So let's break that down. We think about how do people make choices? What are those consequences? How can the brand or group, how can they change those choices or consequences? So again, here you're targeting people. We're targeting certain individuals in various demographics, which will be predefined for you depending on which area or cause that you choose to work with for your ad. So again, if we think about how people make choices, if something is tied to, for example, saving for retirement, right? If we can create ads and visuals that maybe show us, how we're wasting our money, and why we should be saving for retirement. Money drives a lot of people's choices one way or the other. So if you can articulate that to their particular human condition, you can hopefully have a cause and effect for them to realize, oh, maybe I should stop going to Starbucks every day and putting that $5 into my retirement account, right? Really break it down to what they can relate to and how they make choices. Campaign checklist. So if we think about your campaign, and when we say campaign, that just means that it's multiple ads in a series The ads can be print ads, web ads, digital ads, motion graphic advertisements, video, whatever. But the campaign itself is unified, and it's unified through an idea. Okay, so each ad in the unit is based on an idea with the same visual and verbal components. Brand identity, so it must work with the visual and verbal brand identity. So I'm going to be seeing the same fonts, the same colors, the same textures. If I'm using a black and white grungy image in one ad, whether it's a black and white grungy image of a little girl or a black and white grungy image of an old man, the images are all going to have the same visual treatment, tying them together in that campaign. Media, what can this story do in each specific medium? What can it do for its audience? So in your components, you will have to define what ad components you are creating, and you have different options. Really think about the appropriate nature of those ads. For example, if you have, an older demographic, grandma and grandpa, they're not going to be on Instagram, probably not. So you're not going to create an Instagram ad. You might do a Facebook ad. That might make more sense, a digital Facebook ad that would pop up in their feed. But more than likely, if it's an older audience, you're probably going to be fairly print driven, right? So really think of who and how you're creating for, and how those collateral affect that message and how they get and receive that message. Number 4, unity and variety of messages. This has an overarching story of theme. Each ad uses the same tagline. So again, you can have a variety of different messages. So say your hands can be dangerous. Maybe there's a set of 3 ads. Each one of them has a different hand, a different scenario, but this copy stays the same, right? So that's unity and variety of messages. Unity and variety of design. Imagery and typeface choices should contribute to recognition and cohesion of the campaign. So these two kind of work hand in hand. And then again, at the bottom is style, right? Conceptual framework is going to be extremely important in these. You got to make sure that conceptually they're all tied together, even if each of the ads is telling a different story. They have to tie back to the same thing. Visual style, a visual look and feel based on consistency in imagery and type. So let's take a look at the elements of ads. So what are the parts and pieces of ads? So whether it is a commercial ad for Target, or it is a nonprofit ad, or it's a public service ad, you're going to have the same elements. You're just going to work with those elements in a slightly different way based on the nature of the ad. So here we have, you'll notice we have our visual. We have our main visual message that calls our attention. If I go down here, it says breastfeed for 6 months. You may help reduce your child's risk for childhood obesity. So here we have a cleverly placed ice cream sundae image that just so happens to maybe look like a pair of boobs, if you will. Yeah, I said boobs in a college course. You're welcome. Anyway, the image, it's just enough, right? It's not too cheeky. It's not too like, oh my God, there's boobs, right? It's just very subtle, and it gets your attention. And then, so we have the main visual, the line in the headline, and then we have the body copy. So it says, we've got something that's called our attention here and here, and then we're going to look at this. Recent studies show babies may be less likely to develop childhood obesity when exclusively breastfed for 6 months. Call blah, 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 and then there's resources, right? And then we have the tagline. Babies were born to be breastfed. So if I have a series, and then we have our sign off, which is our logos and phrases, Okay. First of all, these don't always have to be at the bottom of the page. You can work with those anywhere in the composition of the page. This is just one particular example that I'm showing you. Where these ingredients are placed, ultimately is up to you and your layout and your composition and your hierarchy, right? Hierarchy is super important. But you want to make sure that you have those ingredients because those are the basic ingredients that call together and tie together your ad. So, for example, in a campaign, we would have maybe there's two more print ads. And then each of them have a slightly different image that also hint at, boobs, breastfeeding, but then maybe the copy stays the same or it changes slightly, right? That would be part of a campaign. And maybe these are designed to be seen different places. Think about where they would be. Just because it's a print ad doesn't mean that it is in a magazine. It might be hanging on the wall in a doctor's office. If it's something to target school age children, it might be hanging in the hall or hanging in the cafeteria. Think about when you were in school, middle school, high school, elementary school, there were these type of things, don't do drugs, just say no. All these other, don't bully in text, whatever, all these other different ads, posters that were hanging in your classrooms and in your school. So just because it's a print ad, that could be a billboard, that could be anything. So you also have to think about if you're doing a campaign and you have, those three different ads, where do we see those ads? Where would we potentially interact with those? And how does that affect the message? All right, so looking at ad styles and visual strategies. So we have creative imagery and photography. Says smoking dulls your senses of taste and smell. Make a choice today, quit smoking. So this person has photoshopped all of this food to look like cardboard. So equating, using that metaphor of equating, this tastes like cardboard, right? You sometimes hear people say that about food that has no flavor. This equating to, hey, if you smoke, this is what all your food is going to taste like. Then we have traditional photography with a strong narrative. So this is just a well lit photo. I really hope that this is makeup and this is not an actual kid that was beaten. We're going to say that this was creative ads and that somebody did this. They just, did some good makeup and photographed this kid. So traditional photography with a strong narrative. So this is the way that they've lit the photo. The whole focus is on the kid. And then here we have just that simple call to action. He has his mother's eyes. Holy crap, right? The kid's being beat, then the mom's being beat, and it just says report abuse, amnesty.org. So, that's pretty much all you need to have that holy crap call to action factor. And they don't all have to be dramatic. A lot of them do use shock and awe, but they can be kind of fun and clever. If we take a look at this one, this is not a PSA ad, but they can be illustrative. I just want you guys to get the idea. The ads can be illustrated as well. So this is a series of Oreo ads. I encourage you to look these up. All of these are really awesome. This is an older campaign, but these are super cool. But you can still have PSA ads that are more illustrative as long as that stays consistent throughout your ads. Okay, we have type-based. So we have manipulated the phone cord of this phone to look like it says the word depression. And then we have a call to action. We listen, we care. And this is for, a suicide hotline, depression helpline. So again, timely, right? This one, depending on the audience, younger kids may not know what the heck a corded phone is, right? But folks that are, maybe in their 20s or 30s or 40s, they still know or remember what a cord phone looks like. So this would probably be targeted towards, a slightly older, not super old, but a slightly older demographic. This one combines type and image. So it says when you lose a leg, you don't just lose a leg. And it narrates the story of losing limbs from, accidents or, diabetes or whatever. So this is another one from the Amnesty organization. So again, thinking about determining styles and imagery. In the first week, we're just going to spend thinking about the background and thinking about the visuals. What imagery makes sense with the story? What does our audience relate to? What resonates with them? What style makes sense? Black and white photos, color photos, other type Photoshop effect photos versus illustration. What is the overall tone and mood, right? Is it serious? Could it be kind of happy? Could it be lighthearted? Maybe it's shelter pet adoption and you want to Photoshop, kind of give all these pets like Andy Warhol style look, right? That's kind of fun and lighthearted, but how do you tie that all the way back to your visual and your concepts? Or maybe it's something that's a little serious, like, disaster relief. There's a photo of a house that's been flooded or destroyed by a tornado. A black and white photo, a well lit, well contrasted black and white photo, really creates the narrative of that impact, of that devastation that we see in the photo. So, just really thinking, tying everything again back to those image styles and how you treat your images. All right, so we're going to stop there. That is just kind of and again, I have lots of other examples on Blackboard for you guys, but just kind of the overall gist of what sets a public service ad apart. It's not just about a cheesy, don't do drugs, kids. It's really thinking about the overall strategy.